introspection here. Today I want to make a list of 5 things I think everyone should know how to do. The first of which, how to jumpstart a car. Look, if you own a car, it's almost inevitable that at one point or another it's going to die on you. So knowing how to jumpstart your car can be very handy. And to that end, it's probably not a bad idea for you to keep a set of jumper cables in your car. And they even sell little devices that you can plug in directly into the car battery and you can jumpstart it that way. But in any case, you definitely still need to know how to jumpstart your car. Even if you don't own a car, knowing how to jumpstart a car can still come in very handy. The scenario where you're out with your friends and their car dies is certainly not unheard of. And I'm going to be honest with you, so long as you're getting the information from a reliable source, it's probably going to take you 10-15 minutes to learn how to jumpstart a car. 20 if you have a hard time learning things in general, at most, and that's really pushing it. So long as you have a reliable source, it really isn't going to take you that much time to learn it, and it can get you out of a lot of jams. So I highly encourage you go and try to learn how to jumpstart a car so that you at the very least have that skill in your back pocket. Now, from the garage into the kitchen is the second thing that I think everyone should know how to do. I think it'd be a pretty good idea for people to learn how to cook. Now, I don't mean that they need to become a 5-star chef and present a 3-course meal in front of me, but basic cooking skills can be extremely helpful. I've noticed a couple people end up going through a fair bit of distress simply because they don't have these skills. Take, for instance, somebody who's on a budget and has to buy cheap food, but because they don't know how to cook, they also have to get pre-made food. And pre-prepared food that's also cheap, generally, not always, but generally, isn't great for you. So between the fact that you're constantly eating the same thing and the fact that it's not too good for you to begin with, they end up getting sick of it and also sometimes sick from it, as opposed to somebody who can go shopping on a budget but can still use their cooking skills to buy cheap ingredients and make a fairly decent meal for yourself. Another thing to consider is that you could want a meal that, depending on where you live, is not readily available to you, in which case the best option is, of course, to make the meal yourself. Or perhaps you have some sort of dietary restriction. Maybe you're allergic to something. Maybe you are on an actual diet, in which case you can make meals to accommodate yourself but are still extremely delicious, and there's no need to ask somebody to customize it. And even if you find a restaurant that makes the custom meals you need, it'll probably end up being more expensive than if you had just made the meals yourself. You could make meals without carrots because you'd be allergic to carrots. Maybe you're going on a diet with less bad sugar, so you can make it exactly how you want it to accommodate for your diet. The list goes on and on and on. But these advantages are provided to you when you have these basic skills. Now, I'll admit that this is probably going to take you a little longer than learning how to jumpstart a car, but depending on what it is you actually want to learn to cook, it's probably not going to take you quite as long as you might think it's going to. Now, if you just want basic things and you're not too picky about it, and you're kind of nervous about learning recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, take this piece of advice. If you know how to do breakfast, you know how to do every other meal. Because traditionally speaking, you can have breakfast for each meal. And you can get pretty creative as long as you know basic breakfast recipes. Take an omelet, for instance. Now, omelets, you probably only need about an hour at most. Honestly, not even that. Most people can probably learn how to make a decent omelet in about 20-30 minutes. But if you know how to do that, you will be able to make a ton of different kinds of omelets. You want a tomato omelet? Just throw some tomatoes into the basic omelet. You want a cheesy omelet? Throw some cheese into that omelet. You want an onion omelet? Throw some onions in there. You want a cheesy tomato onion omelet? Throw those in there. You want a pineapple omelet? I don't know why you want that, but you could totally make it as well. The point being that so long as you spend the time to make a basic omelet, even though you don't realize it, you essentially just learned how to make several different kinds of omelets, and probably the majority of the ones you can think off the top of your head, unless you've been exposed to like really fancy omelets, in which case, of course, it's going to take some more time to learn. But you get my point here. So long as you learn the basic fundamentals, you can get a lot of different kinds of combinations and some really good food out of it. So long as you know basic frying abilities, so just so long as you know how to make a burger or a steak on a frying pan, and so long as you can make mashed potatoes and rice and basic things like that, you can come up with a lot of different combinations or just add certain things. Just with the fundamentals of cooking, you can make some really good food. Obviously, it won't be extremely fancy food. And if you want to learn all these basic stuff at once, just set aside like a Saturday afternoon, to be quite honest with you. Maybe the whole Saturday if you're really clumsy with cooking. But for the most part, so long as you have somebody there who really knows what they're doing when it comes to cooking, you can probably get the fundamentals down. Not really fancy stuff, but the fundamentals down pretty quickly and probably faster than you'll think. Now, the next one, believe it or not, is even more important than trying to figure out where all of the Nerf darts go. Okay, now all joking aside, this one is very serious, not just for yourself, but quite possibly to save the life of somebody around you. I honestly think that everybody who can be should be C.P.R certified. Now, hear me out on this. I can guarantee in the near future, somebody is going to have either a heart attack or is going to start choking on something. I don't know exactly when and where. And that's exactly why I think as many people who can be C.P.R certified should. This way, anybody who is in that life-threatening situation has a better chance of surviving. And that could very well be you. So for you to do it yourself and encourage other people to do it, that increases your odds of survival as well. And I don't know if you know this, but C.P.R can be extremely physically draining. It's not unheard of for even well-fit people to be so drained that they cannot continue to save the other person's life. This is why in the last scenarios, it's best to have more than just one C.P.R person. This way, they can either do one of two things. Either A, they can split the workload, or B, they can rotate out. That way one person has a chance to rest while the other person continues doing the CPR, and then they can rotate out so that the rest of the person can take over while the other person rests, so on and so forth. So even if there's somebody stationed there, it's still good for there to be more than one person who knows CPR. So like I said before, for you to learn how to do it and to encourage everybody else around you to do it could end up saving your life, or you could end up saving somebody else's life. Now, I really hope that you never need to use this skill, and worse yet, that somebody actually needs to use this skill on you. But if it ever does happen around you, best case scenario is that you have those skills at the ready. Now we're going to head back to the garage for the next one. I generally think it's a good idea for people to learn how to change tires for similar reasons as to why you'd want to learn how to jumpstart a car. Now, I don't think it happens quite as often as needing to jumpstart a car, but I think the fact that the majority, if not all of modern cars are built with a place for a spare tire is an indicator that we should probably know how to change a tire for multiple reasons. It could save you money on the tow truck. It could save you time to actually get to a place to replace the tire, because generally speaking, the spare tire isn't the best tire, so after you replace it, you probably want to switch the spare tire out for an actual good tire for safety's sake. And even if you don't own a car, just like with jump starting a car, there are scenarios where you might still need to change the tire of a car. Now, one safety tip that I will offer: try to change your tire in an area where there's a fair amount of people. Try not to go somewhere where there is no people or very few people, because if there's an incident or you need immediate help for whatever reason, it won't be readily available. So if possible, try to do it somewhere where it's well populated. And now for the fifth and final skill. I generally think it's a good idea for people to learn how to sew. Now, I'm sure that somebody on the other side of the screen just said, "Say psych" right now. But just hear me out on this. Generally speaking, we will all wear clothing, carry bags, and so on and so forth. When we're on a trip or don't have immediate access to the rest of our wardrobe, or perhaps we only have one or two bags, being able to sew these things together in case they rip comes in handy. Like if you only have one travel bag or one day bag that you take around wherever you're going on vacation, and that bag rips, it can come in really handy, especially if there's no immediate place where you can purchase another bag to be able to sew it back up. And fortunately, small portable sewing kits are pretty cheap and easy to find, so you can purchase one and throw it in your bag. That way, if you ever need it, it'll be there. Well, guys, those are 5 things I think everyone should learn how to do. Now, understand that I'm not necessarily saying that you need to become a master at any of these things, but having these basic fundamental skills can come in very handy. Think about it this way. Imagine the car of an average person. This car does not have a high amount of torque or large treads, such as an off-road machine, and it does not have a high top speed, such as a race car. But it does have a certain amount of torque so that it can actually get moving. It does have a certain amount of tread so that you don't go flying off the road just because there's a pebble or a puddle on the road. And it has some sort of speed so that you can get from point A to point B in a timely fashion. Just like this car, having basic skills in these areas can come in very handy. Unfortunately, generally speaking, these skills don't take that long to learn. Learning how to jumpstart a car will probably take you somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, and that's probably being generous about it. A C.P.R class will probably take you a couple hours, and that goes the same for a sewing class. I will grant you learning how to cook may take a fair bit more time, possibly 1, maybe 2 days, depending on how determined you are on learning how to cook and how complex you want your recipes to be. And the tire might be a little bit tricky, but that one will also only take you a couple hours if you have somebody there to teach you. So these are 5 things that are well within the average person's capability to learn to be able to do consistently enough that if the situation ever calls for it, they will be prepared for it. Well guys, that is it for this video. If I left out any other basic skills you think that the average person should strive to learn, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. Otherwise, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell button because I post every other Sunday. And until then, hear nothing and listen to all. Bye guys!